Welcome to a new segment of Cruzamento Podcast. We are all about lifelong learning, and this is Cruzamento Education. Our goal is to dive very deep on healthcare and technology topics to provide reliable and insightful information from today's leaders shaping the future. In this episode, we will talk about global pharmaceutical industry with a top leader in this space, Hugo Barbosa. My name is Daniel Gdelha, and together with me is my co-host, André Correia.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Cruzamento Edu. Today we have with us Hugo Barbosa. Hello, Hugo. Very welcome to this show.
Hello, André, and hello, Danielle. I'm super happy to be here.
Thank you. So our very first question in just 30 seconds. Who is Hugo Barbosa?
Well, first of all, thank you for your kind introduction, Danielle. You exaggerated for sure. Well, I grew up in a very small town in the north of Portugal during a period that followed the April Revolution in Portugal, where our excitement with the new democracy was also living at the same time with huge difficulties of the people. And coming from this environment, I had the fortune to build a career that took me out of my comfort zone. And from there, I lived in 7 different cities, in 3 different countries. I met totally different people, different cultures, extraordinary people. I got perspective about the world. And more than that, I have the luck of finding that through what I do, I can follow my purpose of trying to leave the world a bit better than I found.
And talking about that, Hugo, our heads immediately go to the healthcare space. And the purpose of this episode is as well go through some basic elements. To start with, can you help us describing what are clinical trials? And we go through phase 1, 2, 3, and 4. And can you help our audience understand that so that we can set the stage for the drug development process?
Yes, I'll try to do it in a way that doesn't get people bored. But the first thing is the birth of a new medicine it follows different paths, and it's normally like a roller coaster with surprises, with bumps, etc. But there are some common things, of course, and even before the clinical phase. When it gets to the clinical phase, a drug has already a huge investment before, because when we talk about clinical phase, normally we talk about using and testing the drug in human beings. And before we get there, we need to know that if that drug do or not do serious harm. So when we get to that moment where we know that we can start testing the drug in humans, we follow those 4 phases that Danielle mentioned. In phase 1, basically the focus is to test safety and try to get some insights on dosage. Okay, what will be the dosage that we are going to use? Normally are very small studies with 20 to 100 healthy individuals. We still don't go to patients at this stage, and they are not also very long in terms of time. The main goal of this is to try to understand how does the drug acts and interacts with the human body. When we get that, we move to phase 2, and in phase 2 we start to deal with patients, with people with that condition that we want to treat. Normally the studies get a bit bigger, not too big still, but a bit bigger. The main interest is to keep testing safety, but we already get some insights on efficacy, and there is a big focus on trying to get to know more about the drug and the effects of the drug to be able to design properly the phase 3, which is the final phase before marketing the product. So then we come to phase 3. And phase 3 is what we normally call the pivotal studies, where large populations are studied in a single study that normally takes years. And when that drug is studied extensively and the effects, both efficacy and safety, are studied extensively. So when we get to the final of phase 3, we should be able to convey what's the benefit and to which populations this benefit is bigger. And we are in conditions to approve and to come to the authorities and to ask for approval. When the drug is already marketed, it's not over, and that then comes phase 4. And phase 4 are normally studies that are done after marketing, which is basically to keep studying the drug, to keep understanding the effects of the drug, better the efficacy, safety, also risk, potential risks, etc. So it's a never-ending story. Until the product is marketed, we keep studying it, and we keep the eye on everything that may happen, even in real life.
And Hugo, you kept mentioning drug, so let's get into that basics as well. What would be a good definition of the drug that you are referring to, and how do we come to develop one? So we also know that nowadays we can anticipate how a drug probably react in the human body and what the effects are. The innovation is getting us there. But can you define drug? But can you also explain to our audience these modern approaches to drug development, maybe emphasizing on these predictive capabilities?
Well, I'll try. First is we need, if we look to the last decade, the acceleration of the medical science is absolutely amazing. So the landscape when I first came to Pharma was totally different than the landscape that we live today. Together we have not only a deeper understanding of the woman body, also human biology, genomics, etc., and that opens a new world for new medicines. Leveraging these advantages or these advances, pharma companies are focusing their efforts in offering more and more tailored and targeted answers to specific problems or diseases of people. When I first came 20 years ago to pharma, the big markets were, hypertension, diabetes, huge number of patients, normally treated in pretty similar manners. Today, this is not the case anymore. Today, more and more pharma are coming not to treat a huge population, but to treat a specific problem for a specific patient. And this changes completely the way the way pharma interact and place in the market. And this is because what you just mentioned. Today, it's possible through using genetic information of the patient to predict how we will respond to certain medicines. It's also we have biomarkers also to define if a certain patient has, for instance, the potential or a higher risk of developing a certain disease, and we can act beforehand. But science today takes us even further with almost individualized treatments. In oncology, for instance, there are some solutions that are in cell therapy that the treatment is done from the cells of a certain individual that will benefit of the treatment. And so the specific treatment that the individual will get is only for him.
So it's kind of one pill or injection or whatsoever to one patient. So one-on-one.
Which sounds like science fiction.
Yeah.
And if we think that this is cell therapy, but if we go even one step further, which is gene therapies. 20 years ago, when someone has a genetic condition, we were just unfortunate. Okay, yeah. No solution. No cure, no solution. No. Today, there are ways that we can get into that organism and process the gene that is missing and potentially cure that patient, which is an absolute amazing use of technology in the benefit of the patients.
And as well from, of course, as other operational challenges, as you mentioned before, was kind of a mass market. We still have it, but now it's one patient, one treatment, one patient. So the complexity of it's much bigger. And talking about complexity, Hugo, I think one thing did not change, which is when we think about selling a product, putting a product on the market, there are three key elements: speed, label, and pricing. Can you elaborate on these factors? So what are the impacts of those in launching a product successfully?
Well, to try that people follow me, the first thing that we need to know is that if we look, for instance, to Deloitte data, the cost of bringing
a product to the market, I suppose.
The cost of bringing a pharmaceutical product to the market rounds $2 billion US dollars, and more than 1/3 of those launches failed meet expectations. And when we look to the reasons, there are two main reasons. One is not ideal market access, and the second one is lack of understanding of the unmet need. And this goes to the previous question. So when we were talking about large populations, same disease, all treated in the same way, the unmet needs was pretty much clear. The patient has hypertension and needs an agent to get down that blood pressure. When we start to go more and more targeted and more personalized, it's much more difficult to define those unmet needs. And so when a drug comes to the market, there is already a huge investment behind it. There is already a huge spend done behind it. And of course, that investment needs to be taken into account when we plan its commercialization. So when someone tries to sell something, being it a drug or something else, what that person wants is to get a good price, to get it in the market fast, and to get it in everywhere, in every supermarket, in every store, everywhere, available everywhere. And for drugs, this is not different. So what normally would be the ideal world is that we get a good price for broad population, for many people, and then get it approved and reimbursed fast. Of course, this is the ideal world, and the ideal world does not exist. So we need to plan and to look to those three variables in a way that are interconnected. For instance, if I have a solution that is able to treat a big number of patients, I can live with a lower price, because lower price with many patients will allow me to pay all the investment I did. But if I go to a smaller set of patients, then I need a bigger price. And when I start to try to play with those variables in a way as they are interconnected, I will get to kind of a equilibrium phase where I get a fair price as the effect that take into account the effect that my drug is providing to that patient, to the population that really benefits the most, and not to all, but to the population that medicine benefits the most, and I can get it as fast as possible because my offer is adequate and the payers and the authorities will understand it. And so this is basically the one of the secrets of getting access to the market in the pharmaceutical industry.
Yeah, and just wrapping it up to where you started, Hugo. So this is so important because it's very expensive to put a product on the market. Maybe talking about pricing?
You know, that's the next question, right? The pricing, it's never straightforward. It's not for some products which require less early investment, and I'm pretty sure it's not going to be for drugs, right? I think I'd like to focus the question here, Hugo, at the European market? Because if we go worldwide, it gets even more complex, right? So if we focus on the European market, these pricing strategies can differ. We'll need to talk about maybe the reference countries, specificities. Could you please elaborate a little bit more on these complexities around drug pricing strategies across European market? And if you have examples to provide, that would be great.
Well, in most of the European markets, the national price and market access authorities are using or considering prices in other markets to establish their own price. And this is commonly called, as you mentioned, the international price referencing process. And if launching a drug is already a complex thing, and dealing with those three variables that Daniel mentioned in the last question is already complex, IPR is even increasing that complexity. Because if the countries are taking into account the prices in other markets, that means that the launch sequence across Europe needs to be thoroughly planned, so the company is not eroding value on its own brand. And so we need to be very careful on reviewing, because the IPR rules are changing all the time. So reviewing what's the current international references, pricing references in Europe for all the countries, and establish a launch sequence that doesn't erode the value of the drug. One good example is Germany, for instance. Germany is referencing for almost all the European markets, or a big part of the European markets, and normally Germany is the first country to be launched. One of the reasons is because they have a fast access policy, but also it's very important that Germany is one of the firsts, because if everyone references there, we need to anchor a price that is adequate for that product in a good reference country. And then all the sequence needs to be well established. Otherwise, the company will lose a significant part of the value of the drug.
You touch upon the go-to-market strategy as well, and obviously to the benefit of the patient. So the German patients, if the drug is approved in a faster manner there, they will have faster access to innovation, into new treatments. So often it's discussed about how long new drugs get approved. So, and this is for the benefit of the patient. I think this is really important as well to emphasize. And here, Hugo, we talk about go-to-market strategies. And let's say potentially maybe the pharmaceutical industry has been not necessarily very innovative in this matter. Can you please tell us your views here, a little bit high level? What are the different go-to-market strategies?
Yeah, let me just go back, because I don't want to give the wrong impression that pharma companies are delaying launching in some countries for price reasons. The launch sequence is also determined by the system, the reimbursement system in each country, but that needs to be planned in a very thorough way, so everything gets together and everyone gets access as soon as they can, but without eroding the value for the company.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So going for your question, Daniel. So the first thing is, when I always need to start by this. When we talk about innovation and pharma, we need to remember that pharma is a huge innovative industry. If we think about what we do to bring great products in such a incredible way. I talked already about genetic, about cell therapies, about a number of things. This is super innovative and super, advanced. Okay. Now, when it comes to business models, you are right. We are not the fastest company to adopt, for instance, digital engagements or digital tools, and there are good reasons for that. The first one is we work in a regulated space, and we need to be sure that everything that we are using complies with the rules, both internal and external, and we are doing everything through ethic standards. And so there are good reasons for that. But talking about go-to-market model specifically. If we think that, we talked already, if we think that the current market access system was designed for that period 20 years ago, where the drugs were set for big pool of patients like hypertensive patients or diabetes patients, and today we live a totally different situation, we can understand that probably this market access model doesn't fit to this new reality. Okay? So we are in a crossroad, because if pharma is bringing treatments for smaller and smaller group of patients, we talked already about this. If I have less patients, I need to charge more per patient so I can pay the research. And so we are in a crossroad where we have those unmet needs. We need those drugs. The system needs to keep providing the best treatment possible for their population, but we need still to take care of the sustainability of the healthcare systems, and the states need to make sure that they can keep, providing good quality health for everyone. And so we can't just pretend that nothing is happening, and there is a need to look to the go-to-market models and to find other ways of other pricing models, other commercialization models, etc. And there are some that are being tested. Okay, and the most traditional one is the one that everyone knows. The drug is in the market, big sales force communicating the benefits of that drug to HCPs, and then the HCPs take that decision according to the benefits they expect of the drug to treat the patients. This is the most known model that everyone knows. Now, when it comes to smaller patient pools and more targeted things, we need to try to test different models. And there are basically two that are being tested currently. One is what we call population health, which is if I come with a solution for a problem that currently has no solution, instead of trying to get to go to all the doctors talking about that problem, and I still need to go there, but I collaborate with the authorities in order to try to find ways to tackle that population problem from a more strategic manner. That normally requires a different mindset, because one company can't normally do it by itself. So normally that requires that the company stops thinking about the product and the patient and starts thinking about the ecosystem that surrounds the patient and all the needs that same patient needs, and what are the partners that need to come into this display to be able to provide to that patient an overall and complete service that will tackle his problem. And so partnership between companies, pharma, non-pharma, medical devices, states, hospitals are key to get to this kind of solutions. Mm-hmm. Another one which is being used, for instance, for medical devices is what we call pay for outcomes, which is, imagine that you do a surgery and you implant a device in the heart of a patient, and instead of paying that device, you will pay over the years of survival of that patient. And so if the patient lives more, you get more. If the patient dies after 1 year, you of course you get less. Or if the patient dies immediately after, you don't get nothing. And this is kind of a way of sharing the risk between the company that sells the product and the state that pays for it. And of course, maximize the benefits for the patients.
No, thanks for that explanation, Hugo. And it's really amazing to see it can be so innovative on some areas and then a bit more slowly adopting in other areas. And you've mentioned the slow adoption of digital engagement on at least some of the areas. Talking about digital transformation, which then requires not only the technology, but also the mindset and the cultural changes, etc. To what extent are organizations utilizing this digital transformation by incorporating those processes, technology, and mindsets to actually capitalize on the innovation?
Well, it varies depending on the value chain of the product. In drug development, a lot. Okay, when it comes to preparing the launch of the drug, also a lot. Today we have there are technologies that can be used to listen the patient more thorough, like I'm not inventing nothing very special. Social media listening, for instance, it's very easy to get the voice of the patient into the planning process of a certain product, and to make sure that we are developing the drugs that are responding to the real needs of the patients. And this is being used in a quite extensive manner. Now, when it comes to commercialization, Pharma is doing its part, and every company is investing a lot on omnichannel engagement, on good HCP portals. Sorry, it's healthcare professional portals, in opening different channels to communicate with their customers, etc. We are not at the forefront of that race. I said it already, because we are a super regulated market, and so we need to be very careful on what we use. For instance, the use of generative AI that has a huge potential in pharma, but of course we know that is biased on it, and we can't afford to use biased data to define our strategies and to engage with our customers. So there are a number of things that need to be tackled and tested before we move faster into certain technologies for certain use cases.
In thinking about technology, it plays already an important role when we do launches of new drugs, but certainly can play an even bigger role. And when we talk about launching new products, there is often teams called global product teams, or with slightly different names. Maybe then you can explain to our audience, Hugo. And they play a crucial role in preparing and making sure there is a constant dialogue with R&D, marketing departments. Can you navigate our audience through this journey, and who is sitting in this kind of teams?
Yeah, I can. Well, first of all, as I said, when we were living in the previous ages, when things were more clear and the unmet need was also easy to define, normally R&D were developing a drug, handing over that drug to business, and then business was preparing the launch. This is not enough anymore. So the fundamental element for any drug, as I said, is the unmet need, and defining that unmet need in a correct manner today is not the same thing as it was before. So the only way of doing it is bringing together more people and bringing together earlier those cross-functional teams, so they can start not at the end of the development phase, but still during phase 2, to talk, to collaborate, and to make sure that the design of our clinical trials, the design of our development process is taking into account the reality and the real unmet needs of the patients. And for that, we need, of course, to get, marketing, medical, patient affairs, very important here. Also regulatory, it's very important here. R&D, because they are the ones moving with the development strategy, but also government affairs, because to understand the payers and how the payers think and talk about that problem and that unmet need, finance, etc., etc., etc. So it's basically a huge cross-functional team that starts engaging very early, starts to go out and talk with people, talk with HCPs, talk with patients, talk with people that are out there and are ultimately the ones that are prescribing and utilizing the drugs that we provide, so we can really bring their voice and bring their perspective during the process of building an offer to solve a certain problem.
Thanks for sharing that. I'm taking a couple of quite long notes here. Hugo, thank you very much for sharing all these insights. Time is flying, and we'll come now to the last question. And our focus often centers on Europe and North America, where most drugs are sold. And I think you've mentioned and referred to these as well. But as of today, June 2024, the world has nearly 8 billion, or exceeds actually the 8 billion people worldwide. Can you help our audience understand how medications reach these geographies that are going beyond our primary scope, let's say?
Well, commercially, it's true that our primary scope are those markets, not only US and Europe, also China, for instance, Japan, which are huge markets that are commercially very important for pharma. And China is becoming more and more important, of course. But there are underserved areas. And that's we need to face it. There are underserved areas. And those underserved areas are areas where normally the ability to pay for and also the healthcare systems are not providing to their population the best-in-class treatments we have in the world. I'm quite proud of what Pharma does in this end, because, for instance, I know Danielle have worked in one of those projects of trying to serve underserved populations in sub-Saharan Africa, to bring them treatments not in a non-profit manner, so those populations can be served through our own pharma projects. I work today in another company which also does it with a number of communities in Africa. Because it's the only way to serve those populations. So, we can only do it. We can only serve populations that are not able to pay for our drugs, because we are able to market it successfully in US, Europe, China, and Japan. Because it's the only way we can get sustainability, so we can serve other populations that cannot pay for it. And I'm quite proud that Pharma does a big part of what authorities should do and are not doing. Of course, it's not enough. It's not enough, and we need to keep pushing for it. And on my way, I will keep pushing for it as much as I can.
Beautiful, and we count with your leadership, Hugo. We would really like to thank you very much for your time and availability today. And today we talked about the different phases of clinical trials. What are global product teams? What is the triangulation, price, label, timing, amongst many other things? Hugo, very, very last question. If our audience wants to know more about you, where can they find you online?
Well, LinkedIn is the best way of reaching out, and I normally answer to everyone that reaches out to me there. I may not be fast, but I'm answering to everyone for sure.
Hugo, thank you very much once again. I've learned a great deal with your explanation. Hope our audience has too. For those that have listened to us and watched us, thanks very much for tuning in to this episode of Cruzamento Edu, where we focus on education. Did you like it? Did you learn from it? So it's now your time to show your love and hit the like button and subscribe to our podcast for the latest episodes. Also, connect with us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and any of your favorite podcast apps. Don't forget to check out the show notes. There are going to be a lot more details in there as well. And we'll see you soon on another Cruzamento podcast.
Thank you, Hugo. Bye now.
Thank you very much.